Everybody. So my name's Derek Summers. I'm from DCI. I'm going to be moderating the panel here today. So it is the future of card grading and authentication. So we appreciate you coming out. We have a bunch of really good guests that we're going to have here today. Hopefully some really awesome questions. We're going to run for about 45 minutes with some different things that we have, and then we are going to put it out for some Q&A as well. So we hope that you guys can come with some questions, be prepared and stuff like that. So again, that's going to run in about 45 minutes from now. So let's go ahead and get our guests up here. So please give them a round of applause. And we will introduce everybody here in case you don't know. So first one up here, so we have Andy Broom from CSG is the first one. This is Peter in the second spot here from SGC. We have Kevin from PSA, and finally at the end we have Jeremy from Beckett. So thank you to you guys for showing up. So, all right, so just so you guys know, the format for the questions, we're going to try to get typically 1 to 2 of each of these gentlemen to be able to talk about each one of these questions. If they do want to go over and we have some additional stuff, they're going to just let me know. So there may be more answers to certain questions than others, but we've got a pretty nice lineup, and we're going to try to go in a little bit of chronological order here that makes some sense. So first one up, I think this is interesting and on a lot of people's minds. So how has technology for you and your company started to change the authentication and grading process? So anybody would like to start? Sure.
Hi everyone, my name's Peter Steinberg. First off, this is a killer event so far, and I'm very happy to be here. As far as technology, I think that what SGC has done over the last year or so really speaks volumes to how technology can be embraced to kind of move the ball forward as far as authentication goes. Just for example, recently we rolled out an update that we've been working on for a while behind the scenes, but we recently made it public. SGC takes high resolution images of every card that we grade, every card. And what that means is when we give you that image, we're basically giving you the card when it was in our hands, which means if you're about to purchase that card, trade that card, think about buying that card, all you have to really do is go to our website to know if it's 100% good. Because if the picture matches the card, it's good to go. If it does not, you basically have a smoking gun right there. That would not be possible without a pretty extensive app that our CTO wrote. Something I certainly don't do, and that's technology for you. So that's what came to my mind.
Very cool. What else?
I would say, yeah, I mean, for those of you who don't know, I came to PSA from a company called Genamint that I started, which was an automated grading effort. And we have been using that a lot at first to combat things like fraud and trimming. And basically the way we do it is through the automated grading process, we can identify unique print marks on a card and then establish a fingerprint. And then when we see that card again, if the shape is changed, if the edges are different, if the colors are different, that flags for us to say, hey, this card, there might be a problem here. So it goes to a review, and then if it's discovered to be trimmed, et cetera, it gets flagged and not slabbed and sent back. So that's one of the ways we're using that. I think down the line, there's definitely potential, especially in the low end, meaning if you have cards worth less than, say, $15 or $20, it's hard to just physically make that equation work when you're sending cards in and shipping them and slabbing them. Just the material costs and shipping costs alone are more than the value of the card. So I could see a future kind of down the line, a year or two, where we have a sort of a low-end product that allows you to digitally grade cards. It'll give people access to the registry in a way that they wouldn't have to sort of grade cards that probably shouldn't be graded and sent in. So I think there's definitely a lot of space for advancement. You know, we'll kind of take the base of what was Genamint, now called Card Manager, and kind of build that forward. Right now it's being used internally, but I think there'll be a world in a year or two where we will, you know, we'll have something external for those lower end cards.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll follow what the guy said here, and Josh said it earlier in here. Tech is the future of the industry. It's going to be there. And it's not just grading per se. That's definitely going to be an aspect that it helps, but the identification of cards. When cards are coming in, they need to be identified for the labels to be correct and things like that. To have that type tech to roll through those much quicker. That's some things a lot of people don't realize that go into the grading process. The identification of the cards is extremely important. We've had customers very angry if a couple of things are off here and there. And so using tech, not only for the grading part of the business, but identification of the cards that come in here is also something that I definitely want to mention.
And I'd like to also say, not just on the grading side of things with new technology, also operations. You know, one of the things that we've found is that we've automated a lot of our encapsulation process. You know, our philosophy is card comes in the door, it doesn't stop till it goes out the door. So, you know, just as these other gentlemen have spoke about with the AI and, you know, attribution of cards, counterfeit and alteration detection, you know, the operations is a big part of it because, you know, the grading process, there's a lot of data, a lot of information assistance you can give a grader, but at the end of the day, there's a finite amount of time it takes to grade a card. So if you can use technology to streamline everything around that grader, where that grader doesn't have to do anything but grade cards, then that's how you can speed up the overall operation and maintain turnaround times.
That's awesome. So that actually leads into the next question, something that you mentioned there. So how important has it become to stay ahead of the game when it comes to things like counterfeits in the market or reprints? Obviously, some of those are, you know, very easy to see, but some of those have been a problem for other companies as well. So what types of things can you do there?
I would say, I mean, I think we kind of look at it, there's sort of two ways. There's two ways to approach that. One is kind of proactive and one is reactive. And the fingerprinting example that I gave is sort of more on the proactive side. We have an alert system where we say, okay, this is a card that's super commonly trimmed or recolored, you know, the red Jordan Fleer pencil recoloring, whatever the case may be. So there's sort of technology solutions on the proactive side. And then we actually do, you know, given that we've been grading cards for decades, we go through at the leadership level. So Nat, myself, and our head grader, every 2 weeks we'll go through a list of cards that have been sent in, either internally or externally, and vetted, and then we basically go through and say, oh, this is no good, we gotta get this one back. So I think you kind of have to take a two-pronged approach because regardless, all of us have cards in the market. We also have a way to prevent it kind of on an ongoing basis, but that two-pronged approach has worked pretty well for us.
I think that it's important to have a database that is so extensive with these counterfeits, with what is coming in, especially with Pokemon, Magic the Gathering cards like that, that the counterfeiting process that these cards come in with will trick you. They will deceive you. And being upfront with your customers, when you find these things, hey, keep an eye out for this. Watch out for this stuff. Don't be deceived. Like Kevin was saying here, you've got to have these internal meetings and discussions, and our guys have these meetings weekly. Here's what we're seeing this week. Watch out for this stuff. You're going to get deceived. The crooks are always going to stay ahead of the game, and you've got to keep up with them as best you can.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you know, counterfeit and alteration detection, possibly the most important thing that we deal with. You know, it's not. It's a challenge because not only do we have to stay ahead with technology, but, you know, with training of our graders. You know, through our classroom program, you know, that's a big part of learning that technology, what type of technology to use. You know, everything from X-ray spectrometers, fluorescence, I mean, that can be used, and you know, visual spectral comparators, things of that nature that are just tech that's being used in forensics. You know, that's something that all of the grading companies use. But those types of devices, you know, you have now in today's market, you have to use that type of technology. You know, having the regular meetings with the graders and grading staff and going over things that come in and staying on top of that, that's one thing, but also that technology to be used not only to detect the cards, but also in the training. You know, like I've said many times, you know, most collectors, you can teach somebody generally how to grade a card. The challenge is the detection of alterations and counterfeits, and so that you know, it's paramount that's one of the top focuses.
Sure.
I think, if I may, one thing that needs to also be addressed is that the hobby is in a different state than it's been in, at least since I've been in it. And I'm a young guy, but I've been in it for a bit. You know, right now you have sets. Jeremy had mentioned Pokemon and Magic, 100%. I just wanted to add onto those. How about MetaZoo? When a new set comes out that you haven't ever had, it literally didn't exist. It's not a 2.0 or a 3.0 or now the 2022 top set. It's just a new product altogether. The intricacies of these cards, you know, the counterfeiters are very, very good, and it's probably a nice little trick tactic. to attack the new sets that the authenticators don't have as much experience with. So I think that that is a challenge that all of us have faced and we will continue to face. And I really echo everything that these guys have said, which is that that coordination of departments and just kind of gathering all your authenticators in a room is incredibly useful, as is, by the way, buying the fakes. We buy fakes and we buy the real ones, and we have a very extensive catalog of both of those items. So if that toss-up situation ever occurs, it still doesn't mean that we may not, QA the item, questionable authenticity, and just stay away altogether. But that kind of information only helps.
Sure, that makes sense. So as we're gonna, we'll start to transition away from that in just a second, but the next thing, because this has been another issue that goes on there, which is counterfeit slabs, where someone has created the whole slab. And I know that this has popped up very recently at the Dallas show that happened. So what are you guys able to do from a business perspective to potentially stop someone who's going to not only try to send you a counterfeit card, but they're gonna make the whole thing? What can you do to deter that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just say, yeah, I mean, a lot of that, so the tricky thing I think people, not everybody realizes about slabs is that the way they're designed and produced, the payoff from a redesign or an added feature, it takes some time, right? You have a big mold, it's expensive, it takes a long time to get going. So like when you want to change something about slabs, you're talking 6 to 9 months before you really see, volume product available to use. That being said, we have done some R&D around, there are different things you can do, right? You can add different breakpoints, different materials. I think there's a way to basically associate the slab with the cert, with the fingerprint. That's kind of the trifecta, right? If you can identify something unique about the slab, and then that whatever that is ties to something unique about the card and the fingerprint, and then that ties to the cert, you kind of have the right combination there. How to do that is tricky, but it's expensive, right? That's the other thing, is that the material cost goes up as you add things like that. But I mean, that's kind of, I think, the right generic approach for anybody is how do we identify the slab as unique and associate that with a unique card? Because then it doesn't matter how good your fake is, it's not going to match chemically the card, right? So there's different ways to do that and assign IDs. You can do it with chemicals and colors and materials, but that, I think, like I said, generically solves the problem. The how and how expensive is that is the question.
Sure.
I think we talked about it before. There's a lot of money in this industry now. And years ago, you're like, no one's going to counterfeit a slab. It's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars to create a mold. And now $100,000 is one card transaction. It's like, it's worth doing it.
Yep.
And you go on any of these websites and you look, you can find slabs. You can find anything that you want that's been counterfeited. So it's staying ahead of the crooks. It's adjusting things in your slab, in your process, in your technology to make it more difficult to keep those off there. Because the goal is you want to be able to go on a show floor or buy things online and know that you're confident in the product you're getting. So staying ahead of those crooks, now in an industry where there's a lot of money and spending to deceive other people is definitely something you have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I'll expand on the holder security. It's one thing to have a secure label, have security features built into a label, all types of different types of security like microprinting, things of that nature. But you do have to identify that slab with that label and that card, and that's something that we've worked on and developed with our holder, and it's paramount. I mean, you got to be able, the label is one thing that may or may not be reproduced, but if you can take a real label and put it into a fake slab, and so that's kind of the key, is be able to identify the plastic, the holder. I'm people that I've seen, like with our holograms actually embedded into the plastic itself. It's not something that can be removed. Those are the types of things I think we'll see more of that. As to Jeremy's point, we got to stay on top of these crooks, and the money's there, so there's a lot of incentive to come up with a new mousetrap.
Yeah.
I think as far as SGC's perspective goes, if anyone's ever held or seen an SGC card before, we have the Tuxedo Time nickname because we have that black insert. The one thing that has definitely been beneficial to us, which was really just luck, to be honest with you, is the fact that we have a very complicated slab. There are numerous pieces. I often envy these guys because they make a mold and you put the card in. And we make a mold too, but then we also have a material that we have to manufacture, cut, to make sure that each card is protected and displayed properly. In order to counterfeit an SGC slab, you'd have to take a lot of steps. Now I can tell you from experience, it happens, obviously, but that is exactly the reason we went with that high-resolution card image campaign, because although we can't do anything, unfortunately, about the 2 decades prior, moving forward, we certainly are in a good spot to spot those counterfeits.
That's great. Next question. So with the large push towards automation, just in the consumer world in general, what are you guys doing, or what do you believe could be done inside your company in the automation space? So I'll start with Jeremy this time.
Yeah, I think what I mentioned a little bit earlier is identification of cards. We're investing heavily in tech right now, with working with 2 great companies that will have some announcements coming soon, that using that technology to speed up that process internally. Andy mentioned it before, the operation side of it. Getting those cards through every step of the process is important, and it's not just grading, it's the automation of the identification to move that on to the real glue in that, which is the grading team.
I like that little slip of "there's something coming soon" that you put in there too.
Yes. Keep everybody on their toes. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Cool. Anyone else want to talk about automation that you are doing or is coming forward?
Well, I mentioned a little bit ago about, one of the things that we've automated is our encapsulation process. That, again, it's a process that takes a finite amount of time, but to speed that up, if you can automate that, that's a big thing that, we're looking at, we develop. There's other automations too that we're doing and also expanding on. Jeremy mentioned like attribution of cards, being able to identify a card automatically via whether it's AI or whatever system that you have. But again, it's all about, if the grader can sit there and grade, he doesn't have to worry about reaching for anything. Everything is automated and streamlined around that grader. That's the key. So that's the type of automation that has to happen.
I just want to say to Andy's point about having the grader grade. If anyone can agree with that, it's me. That's one thing that we learned at SGC really back in probably 2018, 2019. To be honest with everyone, the graders, a big problem, honestly, with SGC was that we had the best experts in the world. I mean, truly, but they shouldn't be running the business. And I think a big reason that we were lacking in certain areas is because these absolute titans behind the grading desk aren't meant to be, whether it be the face of the company or working on the operation or what's going on in encapsulation. And I think that one benefit that our team has had is when you stay on top of turnaround time as well as we have, it allows you to breathe, and you're not constantly on your toes, almost making these life or death, very quick decisions. So I think taking everything off of the grader's desk except for the cards, and really that exact example through all departments is exactly what probably all 4 of our companies aim to do.
Yeah. So I'm going to go, we're going to start with Andy on this because you are a grader, right? You are CSG's senior vintage grader. Is that your technical term?
That's correct.
Okay, cool. So how do you ensure grading consistency in the wake of all the hiring that you guys have had to do just based on volume?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We use a grading classroom. It's a literal classroom that we train our graders through our system, our scale, our way of grading. And as I mentioned before, most collectors, most everybody in here that's familiar with cards, they can be trained to grade on a scale. The trick is learning the counterfeit and alteration detection. And that's what we do in a classroom setting. We use our technology, we use our exemplar databases of counterfeits, and also not just counterfeits, but cards, graded cards as an example. And so for us to maintain consistency, that's really important. And we even use, on the grading side of it itself, we'll actually pair graders with each other where they're live grading with each other so we can maintain that consistency. And that's the trick, right? I mean, that's for all of our companies is we have to be consistent with our standards. And so it's a very important job to maintain those standards. And it really has to be a grader that doesn't grade, if that makes sense. It's somebody that their focus is they know grading, they're a senior grader, they've graded for years, but they're overseeing the everyday operation, literally working with individual graders going from grader to grader. So, you know, there's a lot of other processes that we use to maintain that consistency, but I mean, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing for all of us, is maintaining consistency. You know, who better to guard your standards than yourself?
Makes sense.
Yeah, I
Any
think-
other expansion?
Go
on that?
through.
Yeah, I mean, what came to mind for me as far as the scale, I mean, I know exactly what Andy's saying when he says you could train someone on a scale. However, and I know for a fact Andy would agree with me, it is hard to teach, you know, especially someone who may not have the natural organic upbringing in cards that a lot of us had, how this all works. One thing that we at SGC have done is we don't really love the idea of hiring graders, because that term grader, it's like, what's a grader? You know, if I gave you some cards and you wrote some numbers on the card savers, would you be a grader? You know, so we've actually created this kind of farm system within the company, where if you excel here, then you excel here, then you excel here, that's when we'll start kind of that classroom process, as Andy alluded to. And I think probably that's something all four of our companies have had to adjust to, because let's face it, in the past, certainly with SGC, I can speak to that, the pie was just so much smaller that, you know, if you saw SGC's grading room only, you know, 5 years ago or so, it looked a lot different than it looks now, you know? So I think the important thing is that we're constantly adapting and staying ahead, rather kind of weighing the hobby down. You know, we should be pushing it forward, if that makes sense.
That's good. Cool. Kevin, I'm going to go to you with this one. So are there any thoughts or ideas of how to better educate the consumer on what should or should not be graded? That's kind of the first part. Or should you just allow the person to do whatever they wish to grade?
Yeah, I don't really think it's our role to tell people what they should be grading. I think, you know, obviously the last 18 months have been a bit of an anomaly. There was a lot of excitement, but the truth is, you know, the hobby is supposed to be something you enjoy. You know, at least for me, I've been submitting to everybody here for years, and I definitely, I mean, the first thing I submitted to PSA, I opened a box of 82 tops, a wax box, and sent in like 100 cards. And I think the highest grade I got was like a 7. You know, it was like a 4 through 7 was my range. And like, but I had fun with it. And I think, like, you know, part of the reason why we want to get down to $25, get down to a lower tier is that, right? Is that, like, we don't want it to just be an investment hobby, right? We want it to be fun. And so I would say generally, I mean, to answer your question, I would say generally, you know, grading cards worth less than 100, worth less than 50, you know, the economics aren't going to work out. If you think of yourself as a card investor versus a collector, you know, I would draw the line at $100 or $75, even when you're paying $25 to grade, unless you know something everyone else doesn't. But generally, I think you should grade what you love. I mean, I collect what I love. It's not the most valuable stuff in the world. You know, I'm looking for obscure Ted Williams cards. They're just not going to go up in value. I told Joe Orlando, I saw him out front here, and I said, you know, I'm looking for a Gaudi Premiums, the 1939 Gaudi Premiums Ted Williams. There's like 17 of them, and they're not.
Those card
Yeah,
numbers are
exactly,
wacky.
exactly. It's like the sepia.
Yeah.
But like I like that card. I want that card, and regardless of what happens to its value, I think it has value to me. And so, yeah, I would just say generally, grade what you love. I think the crib on that answer is, if you're an investor, you know, when you start to get the grading cost being more than a quarter of the value of the card currently, that's probably a good place to draw the line.
Sure.
I also want to add to what Kevin said, and I agree with all of it. I think, you know, when you're in that card for, like Kevin said, a fourth of the card's value, you're in a kind of a pressure cooker situation. You've kind of got to get the grade you're looking for, or it was not the right decision to grade the card. And that kind of puts everyone involved in a bad spot, you know? Because if, for example, we give the card a 9.5, which, by the way, is a Mint Plus grade, a very, very, very high grade of a card, you could lose on it if the grading fee is totally out of whack. And That's not healthy for the collectors, and like I said, I don't think any of us enjoy being in that spot, having to kind of give you a 10 or you regret even doing business with us. So,
I'll tell you what we've noticed as we get through this backlog, cards that were submitted 16 months ago, I know it's an awful thing to say, should not be graded. You're seeing stuff, and we're reaching out to our customers saying, okay, when you submitted this stuff, there was a possibility here, but this is long-term, we're telling you, you don't want to do this right now. Maybe there's something else for you. And customers appreciate that. You say, you know what? The market's changed since that stuff came in there. And so it's good to be upfront and say, is this for your personal collection? Like Kevin said, if it is, great. If you're looking to become rich and retire, maybe not this selection of cards.
Gotcha.
And you know, going back to what Kevin said, you know, grade what you love, collect what you love. And you know, we feel like it's not necessarily our place to tell you what to grade, but if we can provide data to the customer, whether it's pricing, trends, counterfeit and alteration information, things of that nature, you're educating the customer so they make better choices. And at the end of the day, I mean, I have my personal collection. It's not worth, the same to what it may be to others, but I'm still going to get those graded because I want that. I'm not looking for necessarily a return. But I think if you empower your customers with data and information, let them make the decision. So those who are looking to make money in grading, they can make that decision.
and that's pricing, and in addition, I think all of us want to give a gem mint grade, but just because we want it doesn't really mean anything. In other words, I know for a fact that our graders are hoping that next card is just the most pristine card they've ever seen. It doesn't always work out that way, but the bottom line is if we empower our submitters with the way that we're evaluating their very valuable items, I think they would increase their success rate. And as far as I'm concerned, that's kind of a no-lose scenario. Who's really stuck holding the bag in that situation when you know what it takes to get an SGC Gem Mint 10? So you can basically use that information to get more of them, Yeah.
One thing to correct to that, we want to give pristine tins. Maybe gem mints are great, but the Beckett's still going to give them pristine, just to put that out there.
As we're going through these, it's like you guys know what I'm about to ask you next. So you actually hit on a couple points. So this is transition great. So no digs for you guys,
okay.
But your names are in here. So we all know that the grading process got extremely far behind over the course of 2020, 2021. PSA, Beckett, you guys both shut down the lower end services for a while. But as you halted those to push through your backlog, what do you see, and I'm going to start with the two of you gentlemen, then we'll move on, as the ideal balance between price and backlog?
Yeah.
What's that game there?
Wow.
You go first. You guys can coin flip. You can coin flip. You can arm wrestle.
We'll look at each
however you
other.
want to
1,
take
2,
that.
3,
Yeah.
you.
All right,
Yes,
I'll go
you're
first.
good.
I'll go first. So, we basically have a target. I'll say this: we have a target date for when we want to finish the backlog. And I've talked to multiple people out there. I was trying to buy a 21 or 22 tops wax out there, and I was talking to people about this, which is, you have one group of people that have cards with us that want them back, understandably, right? And then you have another group of people who desperately want to grade cards now. And so I am of the opinion that the majority of our attention should be on our existing commitments, while at the same time letting a smaller fraction of people grade new cards. So we kind of are in the, call it 85-15. That's generally 85% backlog, 15% new, and we hold to that. The sort of the least expensive tier we have to limit to keep that balance. The only reason we limit that is because we want to keep working on the backlog and hit our target date, which is kind of in the fall. And so that's kind of the way I see it, which is we like to service both kinds of customers, but existing commitments, we really need to give most of our attention there.
Sure. Jeremy?
I'll say that the cards and having the cards in our vaults do us no good. We don't want them there. We want them in and out as quickly as possible. The best and the worst thing that's happened in this industry is the pandemic. Like, it got everybody back in the hobby. It got everybody spiked up. It's also brought in a lot more competition. A lot more people in this industry, in this market, that were not here 2 years ago. A lot of people piping in, you should do this, you should do this. A lot of new competition for us up here. And I think that's one of the things that we have to be cognizant of, that's available there now. So do you want a backlog? No. Is it nice to have the cards in there as quickly as possible? Absolutely. But I also want to get the price points to where everybody can be involved there. And when you're saying, okay, we want to lower our price points to $10 a card, you're going to get flooded. In this market right now, you're going to get flooded. So you've got to keep that sort of in control. For years and years, we were one of the only services, and I said it at the end, dumb enough to have a money-back guaranteed service. And it bit us in the rear, especially as 2017. We had to get rid of that. And ideally, we want to have that guarantee that says, hey, if you submit stuff for a 10-day service, you're going to get your stuff back in 10 days. That's what we want to get back to. So do you want to have a little bit of a backlog? Maybe, to put a little bit of push, but you also want to get the stuff back as quickly as possible because people want their cards back for one reason or the other.
Yeah, and also, you know, technology plays into that, right? Because to Jeremy's point, we don't want a large amount of customer cards sitting there. It does no one good. It doesn't do the customer good. Doesn't do us good. You know, so by using technology and resources, you know, we want to scale up. We want to increase capacity to maintain those turnaround times, because it shouldn't be which do you want, pricing or turnaround, right? It should be both.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you focus your resources in scaling up, you know, I mean, we have second highest capacity in the industry. You know, we're able to expand.
How much is it?
What's that?
What's your capacity?
Right now? Well, actually, we have 41 graders right now as our capacity.
How many
on
cards
trade.
out the door? I'm legitimately curious. We
Yeah,
don't get
no.
to talk.
Yeah, well, you know, and I'm not plugging them, but, you know, GemRate puts out a report every day. I think yesterday or Friday was 4.6 thousand.
Okay, gotcha.
So.
We're kind of neck and neck, so.
Yeah, but also remember though on GemRate, that's only sports, so that doesn't factor in the trading card side. So roughly about double, but you can combine that. So, but you know that's the key for all of us. You know, is to be able to scale up to meet the demand, so you can maintain your turnaround times and maintain pricing. Because both Kevin and Jeremy are correct. You know, we want it open to everybody. We want to be able to be affordable and also reasonable turnarounds.
I think I'm not going to lie. This is kind of my meatball question to hit out of the park here. If anyone has submitted to SGC over the past 18 months or so, you probably know that you were told 20 days and your card came back in 12, or you were told 30 days and your card came back in 22. We take turnaround times extremely seriously. I think it's no secret that we've been kind of disruptors over the last 2 years or so. And when you're in a market that's operating, you know, today it looks much different than it did 2 years ago, of course. But back then, things were done a little old school. And when my team huddled up, I think the thing that we saw the most as collectors ourselves was, man, it's taking about 2 years to get cards back. We probably want to improve that to really make a splash. And you know, the only reason I'll kind of provide this humble brag is because my team deserves it. They work really hard to satisfy our customers on turnaround time. And although pricing is not as low as we would like it right now, I echo every sentiment said here. I also want to say that a struggle that we have at SGC, kind of behind the scenes, honestly, guys, is we have a lot of ways we could be better, like a lot of ways. I go out there and I try to do as many kind of podcasts or interviews as I can, and I've been told before, well, why don't you just do your own? You know, credit to Kevin because they've done their own and it seems like it's gone well. My point is I can't do a podcast when I'm getting too many cards, because too many cards, as everyone knows, means a backlog. That's what we want to avoid. So I think everyone on this panel is prioritizing scaling their operation right now, because we can't really make anything better if we're constantly on defense, you know.
Perfect. So as we continue this, what's happening of you guys just setting us up. So we went into, from our side, we've been asking our own viewers, fans, that kind of stuff, hey, give us some information that can be directly centered to you guys. So this one is actually for you. So this is from Alex Thompson 23 on Instagram, asked, please rank the following traits in order of importance for your company. And we'll let everyone do this in a second, but I'm gonna start with you, Peter. Customer service, return time, cost, and company growth. How would you rank those?
It's like it's like choosing between your kids. I think honestly, in those four things, the thing that I'm a transparent guy. I don't know if this is the right answer. I'll say how I truly feel. I would say company growth means the least out of those things. I would rather be this little, 100 cards out the door a day operation if it means I'm putting 100 smiles on my supporters' faces. Don't get me wrong. I want SGC to go boom just like all of us want our companies to go boom. But at the same time, I would much rather focus on satisfaction rather than just kind of the quickest route to growth, no matter what that looks like. So I think it's almost a tie for the three that you mentioned, with company growth still of importance, but probably honestly a little less importance than being polite to a customer who's already given their support to our team in answering their question with at least the best shot we could take at it, So that's what I would say.
All right, so I'll repeat them back. So Jeremy, I'll let you go next.
Okay.
So customer service, return time, cost of grading, and company growth.
I agree. I think the growth of the company is probably the least of the three. I'll also say this, I started in customer service and sales, so it has a special place in my heart where you can win over a lot of people with just being nice and having an interest in what they're doing and telling them, don't do that. It's not the right time to do that. I think it goes back to what's important to your customer base and what you're looking for. Turnaround time is important, especially the last 2 years. That's been the most important. And that's been the biggest detriment to our companies because we couldn't get your cards back fast enough. And we didn't have the customer service to keep up with it the way that we needed to. And that's an important part of our business right now. We are onshoring a lot of our customer service that we, for years, did not do. It's our fault. Starting in the customer service business and dealing directly with that, many of the people that I'm out here on the floor right now started talking to them when I was doing shows. So I think it's important. All three are important. I could say that I have a special place, though, if you're just upfront, honest, care about the customer, it's important, but then mix in that turnaround time. I think the guys, if you have the option to pay a higher price, you need the car back faster, that's great. If you're not in a hurry, the price really doesn't matter. So I would say customer service, turnaround time are neck and neck for me.
Perfect. Kevin, we haven't heard from you in a minute, so how do you feel about this?
I'm actually going to rank these.
Okay.
Full, no ties. Okay. And I would say I agree with Jeremy. Customer service, 1. Turnaround time, 2. Price, 3. 4. Company growth. Obviously, 2 and 3 are kind of interrelated. And price and turnaround time. As somebody said, $10 price. It's going to be a lot of cards. Tougher to turn around. But I think that, if we had to only do one, we would start at the top and go down. Meaning, I'd rather get people back their cards on time than have a cheaper price, because at least you're getting your cards back. You have a sense of when you're getting a return, and you can make the decision on price. It's a factor that you, once your cards are in, you don't control, right? And so that's why I put it above.
Sure. Appreciate that.
I might have to agree. I think if the first three are your number one priority, number 4 takes care of itself.
Yeah,
That's the reward for doing the first three, making those a priority.
Makes
Absolutely.
sense. Well said. Thanks to Alex Thompson, 23. We can throw out company growth as not the most important factor here. So we appreciate that. Okay, so the next one is for you, Kevin. So this is Merce92 asked, what are the plans to increase the benefits of being a silver member?
That's a great question. So there's a lot of stuff that we want to layer in there. We have some new initiatives that I think are going to be really exciting to people down the line. I can't say exactly what those are, but there's a lot of different ways you can interact with PSA in the future. That'll all be part of Collectors Club. We want to integrate pricing tools. We want to integrate better access to the registry. That sort of low-end digital grading component I talked about, all of these things we want to layer in. So right now, Collectors Club is a few things and access to our lowest tier. But over time, we'll add in a lot of those services. There's stuff from Card Ladder, there's stuff from Genamint. There's a lot of different acquisitions that we want to roll in there. So basically, the idea is over time, roll in those things, roll in access to digital features, pricing, extra registry features, maybe extra photo features, whatever those things are. So those are a few examples, but over time we're going to add a lot.
That's great. So Todd is going to start going around. So if you guys want to get a question in, go ahead and raise your hand so that he'll be able to do that. I have one last super quick thing while he comes out to the first person. So for you, Andy. So being the newest in the sports card grading space, obviously you're very well established in trading cards. What has been the hardest thing for you to establish credibility in the sports card market?
Yeah, when we started CSG, like you said, Certified Collectibles Group's been grading for 30 years now in coins and comics and paper money. So we're entering into an existing space with sports cards. And, one of the focuses for me was, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We see some things that we want to do differently than our competition. But, I think that was the important thing. And the hardest thing was, let's enter in this space. Let's identify what we can provide differently and focus on that. But keeping in mind, that we're not coming in trying to reinvent the wheel. I think that was the biggest challenge. And the other challenge was the growth, the expanding capacity. With hiring graders or training new graders. I think everybody will agree up here. That's always a big challenge is your staff. So growing a staff, maintaining consistency. Those have been some of the biggest challenges.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Todd, are we ready?
Hey guys, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so first thing I have is an opinion, second one's a question. The first one, as a dealer, as a person who sells every day, I want you guys to remember how important that $20 to $100 slab is for our community and to get new people into it, and also for the kids. I mean, it's the only thing that we can sell to them and what they really appreciate. The second thing is for the high end. Between PSA, Beckett, everybody else, the cracking of slabs. I've seen the pop reports now, and they're just wild. They're different, and especially for the high-end cards, we're seeing people sending the cards in multiple times over and over. What are you guys doing to clean up your pop reports to make sure that we know what the accurate information is for these cards over $100,000, and what are you going to do in the future for that?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So it's kind of similar to my answer around fraud. There's a proactive and a reactive. The proactive is fingerprinting actually solves for this too, right? When we fingerprint a card and we see it again, we know it's the same, not Jose Canseco 86 Donruss. We know it's your Jose Canseco 86 Donruss. So meaning that will allow us to track crackouts and resubs. Only, obviously there's a fraud use case too, but only so that we don't disrupt the population. We can say, hey, this is a one of one. Let's not have 4 of them in our pop report because people keep cracking them out and sending them in. It's not even necessarily, I'm not crazy about it. I worry about damage when people crack cards, but that allows us to be kind of proactively preventing the profusion of erroneous population data. On the reactive side, I would just say we do have a pretty large product group now that's going through the database and finding things like what we talked about. We try and reconcile through imagery. It's sometimes a little difficult with older stuff, but in cases where there's 20 of 10s or 5 of 1s, like we're going to go through and try and reconcile, okay, where's the current slab? Let's cancel all the old certs and go through it. It's a long process, but we do have one person who's actually going through all of that right now, kind of starting with the highest end and working his way down. So
I think it's also coordination, I'd say, between the companies would probably lead to better results, knowing, I should say, that the Luca flawless RPA went from your 9 to my 10, or my 9 to your 9, for, things like that. So
yeah, I agree.
Next question.
My question's for PSA. How do you address the rumors that you guys give certain cards, certain grades based on wanting to control the population reports?
Oh yeah, population control, yeah.
Not trying to be rude.
No,
I see the question asked a lot.
That's the great.
No, I mean, look, so I think, this is something people mention a lot. I mean, if you think about, I'll answer it this way. The sheer volume of cards that we get, it's not, right now, for instance, okay, there's like a Ricky Henderson, 80 Ricky Henderson, there's like 3 10s, I think. And that's a story that people have kind of pushed over time, that like we are limiting the amount of 10s that people will send more of that in. And so I can say with some authority now that I am the actual president of PSA that we're not trying to get more volume right now. Our goal is not, we want to get more volume. Everything we're doing in the market is actually trying to control volume. And so there isn't any motivation. Obviously, I can't prove to you that I'm not part of some secret cabal that's like, you know, deciding which cards I want to be really valuable. But like, that's the reality, is that we have so much volume and so much demand that we wouldn't do anything to try and increase that. And so you'd need to have the motivation to do that, and we just don't have it. And more than anything, I'll say this as well, you know, I'm a collector, I'm a serious collector. Everyone that's involved at a leadership level, or most of the people are serious collectors, and that's not in our nature to do that sort of thing. You know, it's a lot of new leadership at the company, so, you know, I'm fairly certain it's never happened, but I can definitely say it's not happening now.
Next question.
Thank you. This is for Kevin. A couple dual part question, if you don't mind. We have submitted cards to PSA that have come back with noticeably lower grades than cards that had been graded years earlier, and it's clear that, or at least it's clear to me, that grading has gotten hardened and it's much more stringent than it used to be. Is that fair to say?
I don't know if I would agree with that necessarily. I mean, I think there's definitely the impression there's a huge volume of cards that have been sent in. I think people are sending in more cards. I don't know that the standards have gotten harder. You know, I think we do try and monitor this actually too. We have a way to monitor the kind of grades of cards over time, and they haven't appreciably decreased. It may seem that way, but we do study this, right? We'll take a card and we'll track it over time. And if we find places, there are places where sometimes things get tougher for one reason or another, we try to correct that. So I believe that you are experiencing that, but I can tell you statistically, it's not happening on like a wide basis.
Right. So the second part of that, if cards come back to you in the PSA guarantee for you to take a look at again, will you guys pay out on that guarantee and the difference between, say, standards today from where they were, say, 10 years ago?
So are you asking if the grade guarantee, I'm not sure what you're
If the
asking.
grade guarantee would make it so that if you would reevaluate the grade on a card, would you pay out the difference between, say, a card that was graded in 8-10 years ago that now you may grade a 7?
Yeah, I mean, I think the guarantees are irrespective of time. So, I mean, anything that falls into that guarantee, we'd pay out on. You know, it's a whole wide variety of things. If there's a fraudulent card in there, we pay out on that too. So, you know, there's some strict conditions by which that has to happen. And but yeah, I mean, we pay out on the guarantee when the guarantee applies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Peter, you had something real
Yeah,
quick?
I did want to say, you know, obviously, I guess everyone's perspective is different, and this is certainly, you know, I guess more of an opinion than a fact, but I do feel very strongly about the opinion that I know not only myself, but a lot of, really all of our grading team feels. Grading has evolved over the years. I truly think it has. There is clearly a stronger emphasis on things like centering. You know, if you look at 10s given not only by certain companies, all companies, in the year 1998, you know, look at this event and how different it is than even 2 years ago, let alone the landscape back then. So I think, you know, in a sense, grading is harder today because our graders have gotten smarter. And as the market evolves, I think that grading should be something that pays attention to the way collectors feel. I will say this, though. I know PSA does it because I happen to have your app. You know, we at least give the date that the card was graded on, as do you guys, which I find extremely beneficial. Because just being totally honest with everyone, a card that received, you know, a Gem Mint designation last month does carry a little more weight with me than a card that received a Gem Mint designation in 2004. You know, doesn't mean you have to agree, but just sharing kind of my perspective, I guess.
Thank you. Next question. Where's our mic? Yep.
This is a, can I just not use a microphone?
Yeah.
My question's to PSA, Beckett, and SGC. So I was diving through your financial statements, you know, when you were public, and it seemed like you were at $11 at cost per card to grade. I was wondering kind of what the initiative is between you three on lowering that price per card, and specifically why there isn't more of a drive to automation and kind of keeping that human element involved. You know, if you really wanted to lower that price, you create a fixed cost kind of, you know, model where you just lower as you continue to churn out production. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all talked about automation. I mean, for sure, that's part of it, right? That you know, 11. I don't know. 11 isn't exactly correct, but it's not so far off. I think like, you know, that's as you mentioned. You know, how do you grade a card for $7 if it's $11? You know, it's not going to work out, right? So you're right. Automation is kind of the answer to that. The truth is, for stuff like I talked about in terms of fingerprinting and pre-grading and grading assist, that stuff just takes a lot of time. You know, machine vision takes a massive amount of training data. All the work we did at, you know, Genamint, now in Card Manager, it takes a long time. The goal is definitely to get there, not to replace graders, but to better assist them, provide them detailed, you know, defect layers and centering suggestions and these kinds of things. It's just taking time.
Do you think that eventually with enough data, computers can outdo humans in grading?
No, I don't.
Really?
No.
You don't think that a systemized computer could do a better job at evaluating a card than?
No, and I mean, just so you know, I have a back. I mean, I literally built a company to do that, so I do have some background in that. And so, you know, I would say, what's that? How long ago did you build that company? 2 years ago. PSA bought it last year. I don't think. I think it can. I think. Sorry, let me restate that. I think it can be done, but I think we owe it to customers. I think there is a level of accuracy that you miss, certain things that you can touch and feel. I think there's a level of accuracy that you miss without a human involved. Yeah. I think for lower end cards, it works really well. I think it's enough, but you're going to get more holding the card, feeling the card. I was talking to, maybe that was you guys, but I was talking to somebody about this, like for reflective cards, for instance, just getting a good image, like they're so reflective. So even in a high res image, you know, without being able to rotate the card, et cetera, it's difficult. And I think if you spend the time to get a 3D scanning robot, you can maybe get a good enough image where you can really grade the card well digitally. The problem then is scale, right? So there is a way to really study the card and do it with machines, but it's going to take too much time.
Cool. Do we have time for one more question? Yes.
Hi, guys.
You are our last question for the day.
Thank you for being here. This is Dio from Trace and Taste. We're actually from Europe, and we feel left out because of the logistics. So the main question is, if you guys are planning to do something and be there, not long term, but in the next few months or years.
You mean
Thank
like
you for
shows?
your time.
Do you mean like shows?
Do you mean in regards to shows, or do you mean in regards to grading?
In regards to grading.
Grading.
Grading in Europe so that we
Jeremy?
get access to it.
Jeremy,
Yeah,
why don't you start?
I'll start. Pre-pandemic, we had plans for international growth, and that is in Europe, that is in China, that is in Australia with some of our customers. That was the plan to get there. Canada is one of the easiest ones that I think that we would have had that in place for on-site grading pre-pandemic, and it's going to come, absolutely. I think we're going to see it this year, and I've said it for for a year, that the World Cup this year is going to show that, hey, we need to be everywhere, have a footprint in every place. We've got reps in Europe that can help with getting your cards submitted, you're getting your autograph items submitted as well. So international growth, I think, is inevitable when the world gets back to normal.
Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, and you know, we have grading offices overseas right now for coins and currency. We have an office in Munich, London, Shanghai is one of our big operations, also with stamps. So that's something for us. We'll definitely expand both trading cards and sports cards in the very near future, where we have a presence for those at those offices.
Perfect.
Yeah, hey, unfortunately, we don't have that kind of head start, because that's truly a head start there, you know, to have those offices already built out. But I think what we have been working on is at SGC, we have a satellite office. I'm not sure if, I can't speak for these guys, but we basically operate in 2 separate locations. Now, I'm not going to lie, these locations are very close to each other, and it's almost the kindergarten of functioning in different locations. But the reason we did that In full transparency, guys, a big decision that leadership at SGC is toying with right now is, do we want to go with the model of having this almost Amazon fulfillment center type space that's, 100,000 square feet packed with everyone in our staff? Or do we want to be McDonald's? Because I think one thing that SGC has shown to be very good at is operating and scaling and teaching the love of cards to people who may not have had it previously. And I think that taking those steps now help maintain consistency when this office is in California or New York or Texas or overseas. So.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that question. And thank you to these guys, Jeremy from Brecka, Kevin from PSA, Peter from SGC, Andy from CSG. And that is everything that we have for you guys. So thank you for coming to join us.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the discussion.
Thanks, man. Great meeting.
Good job up there.
Yeah.